Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Harry Wolf, and if you're here, you are interested about JavaScript. And thankfully, I am here to talk to you about JavaScript. I have a fun title for this episode, one that I'm not actually going to use in the YouTube title channel because I don't think it's going to get that much hits. Today, we're going to delve into the world of the reduce method, and what I wanted to actually call this episode was Reduce Your Enthusiasm, a play off one of my favorite shows, Curb Your Enthusiasm, but I think if the title of this YouTube video is just Reduce Your Enthusiasm, I don't think people are actually going to click on it because I wouldn't know what that means. Today we're going to talk about the reduce method, which in JavaScript itself is a built-in method on the array prototype. It's a built-in method for arrays. Today we're going to show you what it looks like, why would you want to use it. There's a bit of controversy around reduce in the community nowadays where it quickly shot up in popularity thanks in large part to Redux, and it's kind of getting a backlash right now where people are saying don't always use reduce. It makes things harder to read sometimes. It's not the best way to write code sometimes. I'm not going to put a dog in that fight, but if I was, I'd say use it when you want to, but just be aware of the trade-offs that you're making by using this reduce function. Talk is cheap, actions speak louder to words, so let's click to the keyboard. Okay, I figured we start with a nice little example of using reduce. I'm going to make a new folder called reduce. I'm going to seed into it. We're going to make a new file called reduce.js. Then I'm going to open up VS Code to start playing around in here. Let's maximize for now. And we're going to open up our old file. And what I actually want to show you first is the built-in reduce method to kind of explain how it works. What I'm going to have here is an array. And we're going to put in there the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. And for this esoteric example, I want to actually add up all those numbers in that array to get the result. So the non-reduced way of doing that is I could say let answer equals 0. I can say array. I actually don't like array. Sorry, just I want array dot for each. And we'll say item, and we're just going to easily do answer plus equals item, and then console log out the answer. And I always love being able to spell. Actually, for this episode, I figured out how to actually do debugging inside of VS Code. Surprisingly easier than I thought. Debug, we're going to say node. This is going to run the code. And then here I have the answer of 10. So you add up all these numbers. 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 plus 3 is 6. 6 plus 4 is 10. That's the answer. So that's the for each version of doing that. Let's actually do this the reduce way, where instead we can have reduce answer equals array.reduce. It takes a iterator function, which the first value of that is the previous value, which colloquially is called the accumulator sometimes, so I call it that. Then we have to do the current value, which is the item. And then the other values in here, I don't really care about, the current index and the array. So I'm going to actually just take this, and I'm going to return the accumulator plus the item. Whatever value I return, so the way that reduce works here, let's actually just verify that this is working correctly, is we got here the reduce answer. We'll save that, and we'll rerun it with node, so 10 and 10. Let's just create this as a node so I don't have to keep doing that. Great. So I can just hit this and I'll just run and get the value right there. So a handy little way. It made it a nice little launch to show the default launch configuration for running code here. So now I can just go here, hit play, and I am all good to go. So the way that reduce works is that by default, the accumulator is the value that you're returning. The accumulator is either the initial value or the first item in the array. So in our case, we made reduce take no second argument. So reduce can actually take a second argument, which is the, where is it here? Reduce callback function. And then you can also have so previous value, current index, and then also one that takes the initial value. If I actually go to Chrome here, I can do reduce MDN, and it's kind of easy to read the documentation on here to actually understand what's going on. But the callback function takes the accumulator, the current value, and then it optionally can take an initial value, which means that if I wanted to, I could actually say the initial value is 10. So I can save that, run this, and you can see here that that second console log is 20, because when this accumulator runs, the accumulator will first be set to 10. 10 plus the first item be 1, and so on and so on. So essentially I'm doubling it. Without 10, the accumulator is actually set to the first item in the array. So the first item is 1, so the first accumulator is 1, which is essentially the same thing. So this is kind of like the comparison. This is the for each value, and this is the reduce value. The main benefit of reduce, and this is like really the only benefit and the reason why people use it, but also the argument for not relying on it also comes in, is that the main benefit of using reduce is you don't have to actually use these like holder variables. Like there's no need to hold this answer variable because that's done for you inside of reduce. It's all nice and encapsulated and makes it kind of easy to easily transform values. Hopefully that kind of gives the baseline of reduce. It's used a lot also when using JSON responses if you want to manipulate them. For example, let's say I have this JSON response of people. So name of Harry, I'm eating a bagel. Name of Wolf, I'm eating blood. Because that's how I get alive. So what I can do here is I can say, you know, transformed result equals array of objects. Dot reduce, and then again I can say accumulator value, and then my initial value I'm actually going to set to be an object. So in this way I'm kind of doing like a map transform on this operation because I am not really turning the same type of object that's being given to it. But this is also very common when just writing front-end code. So actually this accumulator now is actually this object. So what I can do here is, let's say I want to key everything on each object's name value. So I can do value.name equals value. And then of course I have to return the accumulator value to be the next value on the next run. So now if I console log this and I run it, beep, 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 beep. So here's this object, and if I expand it, of course there's nothing there. Let me actually just do this. This is always fun. What's this do? Nope. And we can just run this, and get a breakpoint, and now I can actually see this transformed result has Harry and Wolf, and those are the actual values on there. So again, this makes it, or I can even do JSON stringify, make it even easier to run debug. I don't know what that does, but that's fine. And then play, and we're good. So that's the result there. So I've transformed the object, so I can actually I can make this even easier. Null to play, and here we go. So nice easy way to transform the object to make it easier to consume if I have some UI that depends upon that. So that's kind of the skinny on that for why these things are there. That's only part one of this video. To just give you an overview about what reduce is. For fun today, let's actually implement reduce ourselves. Reduce, I think, is a ES5 feature. So it hasn't always been around, and actually there's, Lodash, which exists and actually has their own implementation of reduce. And what's really cool about their implementation of reduce is that it works on both arrays and objects. So it just reduces a collection, and then you can actually, for an object, So with an array, you get the value, but for an object, you can get both the value and the key of that object, which makes it kind of fun to transform things really easily. So I actually want to rewrite this reduce function ourselves to kind of get an idea of what that looks like. And we're just going to kind of steal the API of Lodash. So let's start. And I'm just going to remove all this old code. So we already know that this answer for the first array has to be 10. Whoops. So let's actually do this. Let's remove the for each answer. Don't care about that. For all this object stuff, we're not going to worry about that for now. So we'll just stash it over there. So here we have this reduce function, and let's rewrite it with our own. Let reduce answer equals reduce. We're going to pass in the array. We have the same accumulator, so I'm actually going to copy and yank this here, just like that. And then we should have in here the answer of 10, just like we did before. Of course, if I run this now, it's going to get a nice little error because it's like, yo, dog, where is this reduce function? Which is a fair thing to ask because we haven't written it yet. So let's start at the top. We're going to do function reduce. The first value that we kick in there is a collection. We'll just steal that from Lodash. We'll have the reducer function, or the, what do they call it? They call it the identity, and this calls it the callback function. We'll just call it the reducer for now. And then also we take the optional initial value. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to dance back and forth with ES 2015 plus features and non-ES 2015 plus features because it's just going to save time. So that first one where I'm going to kind of cheat is actually going to say array is array collection. There's other ways to check if something is a array, but this is now a built-in way, so I might as well just use it and be fun with it. So what I need to do here first, so now we know this is an array. What I have to do here is iterate over this collection and take those values and then run the reducer function each time. So I'm going to make a for loop. So for let index equals 0. We're going to say index is less than collection.length and then index plus plus. I rarely write for loops anymore, but there's a reason that I'm going to use this in a second. And also need to have a pointer here. So I'm going to say result equals initial value. So what I'm going to say here is I have to check for this condition where if the initial value is set or not. That's where things kind of get kind of tricky because if it's not set, if the initial value is not set, then the first value has to be the first value in the collection. So what I'm going to say here is if result is null, which means that it is not set, which means you don't have an initial value. We're going to say result equals, here we're going to do current value equals collection, and we'll take the index from there. So the first loop, so this is the first time through, it's going to be 1. And because the initial value that we set to result is null, we're going to say the result equals current value. And then for now, we're actually just going to say, go back and do the next one. We just kind of set up our default edge case, because now the default behavior is actually going to be result equals reducer, and that argument is going to be, it takes the result, the accumulator, the result, takes the current value, and that's it. And then after the for loop, we return the result. So let's see what this does. Let's play. 10. Look at that. So that actually works. Amazing. Exciting. Let's actually step through this to actually kind of see what's going on a little bit more. So we're going to hit play again. So here we have the initial value, which is undefined. Actually, before we do that, let's actually do this again, where if the initial value does have a value. So if I actually go here and I say 10, the expectation is that this should be then 20. So if I hit play, 20. So cool, things are working. So let's actually step through this to kind of get an understanding for what's going on here. We have right here, we have here the initial value. So result is undefined because initial value is undefined, so it's undefined here. We're going to go into here. We're just going to step into here. So the current value let's step over, is going to be 1, right? Because that's the first pointer in the array. And here what we're saying is that if result, which is undefined, so equal equals null is a shortcut for saying if it's null or undefined. So if it's null, that means that we don't actually have any result yet, which means that no initial value is there. So let's set that current value that we had, that first item in the array, into result. And the reason why in this loop we don't actually call the reducer is because we already kind of done the reducer implicitly by taking that first value. There's no need to like call the reducer. We'd have to then artificially move the pointer to the next section in the array, which would just cause a lot of mental complexity. So here we're just saying this is our default case, we're set, we can continue. Then after that, everything's pretty straightforward, where we have here the result is 1, the current value is 2, and then we just start iterating over that values. We can go down here, and the result is 3 as we reset it, etc., and so on. Very, very cool. So let's now do the object case. So if I have down here a object, so const age, and we're going to do another obj answer equals reduce, and we're going to actually just double all the values on this. So we're going to reduce the obj, and we're going to say the accumulator, and then we take the value and key to mimic the API that's made in Lodash. And again, we're going to have, so we have here the accumulator, which is by default the first value, but in this case we want it to actually be we actually just want it to be a new object. We actually just want to transform this to be a new object. So accumulator, and then the key is going to be here, and then value times 2. Then we return ACC. So then this, if we console log this, ideally it should say aged 40, date 4040. So if we run this now, of course, let's actually comment that out, just so we don't have to worry about it. Remove this. We get undefined because we don't actually have any behavior defined up here. So now we're in the object case. So here we're going to do the same thing where we actually have to iterate over the object. And there's a few ways to do that. You can get all the keys of it. So you can say keys, object, keys off the collection. The caveat that is a micro optimization here is that if your collection has a lot of keys, putting all of those keys into memory is just going to add some memory pressure. It's just going to put a lot of things into memory that's not necessary. So instead, we'll just do a for loop over it, as we did before. I love how there's these autocompletes here, so I can just kind of do a for in here, which is a nice little shortcut, so I don't have to retype all of this stuff. So which this is saying is taking every for const key in object, so const key in collection. So for every key in the collection, we have this has own property check, which has to do with making sure that you're not taking keys off of the prototype of an object, where you can get if there's an object that you extend, you can actually get the keys off of it. It's like an old kind of like safety check in JavaScript that is just good practice. There's other built-in methods now to help avoid that, but we'll keep it here. And then here we're going to say value. So now we have this whole loop here where we can now do the same thing as before, where we can say if result is equal to null, means there's no result there, then we can set result equals to value, because we take the first value there, then we can continue. Otherwise, we can say result equals reducer. We put in, I don't know why it's so the result, and then we put in the value and then the key. And then at the end of here, we can return the result like that. So now let's actually run this. And here we have age 40, date 44. And I have no idea. So if I were to do this without, so that makes sense. We're multiplying this here. If I take this away, what the heck happens? I just get 20 because the first value is 20, and then I'm just, yeah, that doesn't work. I'm expecting it to be an object, so it has to be an object, and there it works. So now if I uncomment out the previous example as well, right here, then that should also still be working as well. So 10, take the old example here, this array of objects. There's no reason why this shouldn't still work. Let's grab that, move that over there. And let's save that and run that. And here we have the same thing there, being transformed. And that is our reduce function, where you can actually reduce both an array and an object. That is reduced in a nutshell. Kind of lets you kind of do like, I almost think of it as like a map transform function, because reduce is a bit of a misnomer. In the case of that array of numbers, it's definitely reducing it to one value, but in many ways it's just a transformer. Just lets you kind of arbitrarily change collections to other things. Where reduce comes in handy is if you're chaining off of many functions to do a lot of transforms. If you have like an array, then you call .filter, then you can call .map, then you can call .reduce. Like it composes nicely in like a functional landscape sort of thing. If you are not aware of reduce, it's definitely harder to read when you first look at it, but especially knowing about that second argument of reduce, knowing that that's the initial value that you can set, like that's the thing that took me a while to remember, but is insanely powerful once you start using it a lot. Hopefully that was a fun little coding exercise. Reduce is a little squirrely of a function, but extremely powerful and also extremely abused. So with great power becomes great responsibility. That's the episode for this week. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. If you did, let me know in the comments or on Twitter or by becoming a Patreon subscriber. You can also subscribe to my newsletter where I push out news items like the console log did in the past days every week. And I will see you again in the next episode when I record it and then edit it and then upload it. Until then, my peoples, bye-bye.